In 2020, charitable organizations saw this sudden flood of over $90 million in donations. But all that structural chaos turned that treasure into a giant ghost ship with no captain, leaving millions, open to alleged theft.
Exactly. And that's what this deep dive is all about. It's about the inherent fragility of some parts of the charitable sector.
We're looking at how a noble mission can become utterly vulnerable when massive amounts of money just arrive way too fast for the systems that are meant to protect it.
That's right. We're looking at federal indictments, financial reports, charity watchdog analyses, all sources that expose a crucial weakness. It's something called the halo effect.
The halo effect. That's the idea that the mission is so good, people assume the finances must be too.
Precisely. It's this false sense of security where the charitable mission itself, discourages the ironclad financial controls that you absolutely need to prevent fraud.
So we are examining these internal governance failures and external pressures that could turn a noble cause into a massive fraud opportunity. And our mission here is really to understand the mechanics of that failure so you, the donor, can demand better.
And we've zeroed in on an extremely stark case study. We have an Oklahoma City chapter leader, a Tashella Sheri Amore Dickerson, who is now facing, I think, 20 counts of wire fraud and 5 counts of money laundering.
Wow.
And the accusation is that she embezzled $3.15 million in bail funds. This was money specifically intended to help people arrested during racial justice protests.
And the details of where that money allegedly went, that's what makes this so illustrative of a total structural failure. We're talking Caribbean vacations, multiple real estate properties.
And unbelievably, at least $50,000 spent just on food and grocery deliveries.
For her personal use.
For her personal use.
Yeah.
This level of alleged personal enrichment from public trust, it forces us to look right past the mission statement and straight into the financial ledger.
Okay, so let's unpack the specifics here. Because how the money was allegedly diverted, that tells us exactly where the control systems just completely failed.
Right. The story starts with the executive director of the Black Lives Matter OKC chapter. She took over in 2016. And since 2020, her organization raised more than $5.6 million.
And most of that was specifically for a national bail fund.
Yes. The money came in, it was used for bail, and then you get to the critical moment. When the defendants' cases were resolved, that bail money was returned to the organization.
So it should have gone back into a controlled account, right? Like a revolving fund for future needs.
It should have. But instead, the federal indictment alleges this staggering pivot. Dickerson allegedly diverted $3.15 million of those returned funds directly into her personal bank, PayPal, and, get this, Cash App account.
Cash App. $3 million into a Cash App account.
And that's not a small slip-up. That was the alleged systematic siphoning of most of the organization's returned liquid capital.
And when you look at the spending, it's a blueprint for exploiting lax oversight.
It is. The indictment lists, 6 real properties purchased in Oklahoma City, a personal vehicle registered in her name, and those trips, Jamaica, the Dominican Republic.
The $50,000 on groceries, to me, that just strips away any possible deniability. You can't claim that's a programmatic expense.
No, you can't. And what's fascinating here is the structural loophole that allegedly made this possible. BLM OKC was not a registered 501c3 on its own.
Okay, so they didn't have to do that strict public financial reporting.
Right. They used a third party, what's called a fiscal sponsor, the Alliance for Global Justice, to handle donations and ensure tax compliance.
Now, that system is meant to provide accountability for smaller groups, but here it sounds like it was the opposite.
It seems it introduced a fatal point of failure. Dickerson is accused of submitting false annual reports to that sponsor, claiming the funds were only used for tax-exempt purposes, all while concealing the alleged embezzlement. The sponsor, relying on her information, was allegedly blind to where the cash was actually going.
So if you're a donor, the critical takeaway here is pretty simple. When the most basic internal monitoring fails, when cash can go from an organizational account to a personal Cash App, your donation is immediately at risk.
It's not fueling the mission anymore.
No, it's fueling private luxury. And that lack of structure, that is the very definition of vulnerability.
And that lack of financial discipline, it brings us to the broader governance breakdown. Let's shift focus to the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, the larger entity, because their structural chaos really shows how scale can magnify opportunity.
This is where it gets really important. After the 2020 protests, the Global Network Foundation, or BLM-GNF, received an incredible $90 million.
$90 million.
That kind of rapid influx of capital exposed a complete lack of infrastructure. Watchdogs described it. I love this analogy. As a giant ghost ship full of treasure drifting in the night with no captain.
That's a perfect analogy. It captures the administrative negligence completely. When you have no one at the helm of $90 million, you're not managing a charity. You're managing an opportunity for mismanagement.
And the numbers seem to bear that out. I was looking at their fiscal year 2023 financials. BLM spent 53% of its cash expenses on overhead.
53%. So only 47% actually went toward programmatic activities.
A healthy charity wants to maximize every dollar reaching the mission. When overhead swallows more than half the budget, it suggests a deep disconnect between what donors intend and what the organization prioritizes.
Well, and it makes tracking specific funds much harder. The money just gets absorbed into general operating costs where, oversight is often weaker.
And that weak oversight led directly to some very high-profile purchases that critics called, well, profoundly misaligned with the mission.
You're talking about the $6 million home in California.
Exactly. That purchase faced intense scrutiny. When money intended for social justice causes is funding luxury real estate, it sends a clear signal that internal governance has failed the public trust.
And if we dig into that governance failure, the board structure is really illuminating. Charity Watch noted that for fiscal year 2024, BLM reported only 3 voting board members.
Only 3 for an organization that large.
3. And of those 3, only 1 was classified as independent.
And that distinction, independent versus non-independent, that's critical for you, the listener, to understand, right?
It's absolutely critical. An independent board member has no financial stake in the organization, other than their unpaid board duties. So having only 1 independent voice among 3, it means power is heavily concentrated among insiders.
So there's no one from the outside with the authority to really question these million-dollar decisions.
Exactly. And that lack of independent oversight leads directly to what accountants call related party transactions. This is the financial loophole where insiders can allegedly enrich themselves.
And BLM reportedly paid over $2.2 million, a staggering 24% of its total expenses, to a consulting firm owned by a board member.
Just to clarify, a related party transaction is basically contracting work out to yourself or someone very close to you. It's an inherent conflict of interest.
Right, when the people responsible for financial oversight are also profiting from the organization's contracts.
The financial statements immediately become suspect. And it wasn't just the $2.2 million. An additional $400,000 was paid to a security company owned by a founder's sibling.
Charity Watch rightly stated that the scale of these conflicts rendered the foundation's financial statements unreliable.
And these governance failures, they aren't complicated accounting errors. It's like removing the traffic lights and the lane markers from a busy intersection. The chaos lets bad actors just drive off with the cargo, the donations.
And nobody knows exactly how much was stolen or where it all went.
Let's generalize this a bit, because these specific cases are symptoms of deeper vulnerabilities you can see across the entire nonprofit sector. And this brings us back to the psychological element of fraud, the fraud triangle.
The classic model. Can you quickly break down the 3 sides for us?
Sure. The fraud triangle has 3 elements: pressure, rationalization, and opportunity. The pressure could be, personal debt or just wanting a lavish lifestyle.
And the rationalization is the excuse they tell themselves, I deserve this, or I'm so important to the mission, I can manage the funds however I want.
Exactly. And then there's the third side, the one we've been focused on this whole time, opportunity.
Created by weak internal controls.
Precisely. The opportunity is created by those weak controls. Nonprofits often decrease controls because of that halo effect, the belief that the staff must be morally sound because the mission is. And this excessive trust creates the open door for fraud because no one is watching.
And we saw that opportunity exploited right down to the grassroots level with that whole fiscal sponsorship model.
Which brings us to the legal consequences. Specifically, the fiduciary duty that every single board member has. This isn't just a suggestion, it's a legal obligation.
Fiduciary duty sounds very technical. What does it actually mean for, say, a community member on a board who might not have a financial background?
It means they have a legal obligation to review financial statements, tax returns, and budgets to ensure public funds are used for the mission, and only the mission. A lack of financial experience doesn't excuse you from that duty.
So if you're on a board, you have to ask the tough questions. You have to insist on independent audits and transparent books.
That legal duty exists specifically to prevent the kind of massive self-dealing we've been discussing.
And if that duty is breached, the organization faces potential criminal prosecution. Things like wire fraud, which can carry up to 20 years in federal prison. But the most catastrophic risk is losing tax-exempt status because of something called private inurement.
Inurement is just the technical term for using tax-exempt funds for the personal benefit or private luxury of an insider. If the IRS revokes your tax-exempt status, it's organizational death. You can't receive tax-deductible donations anymore.
Which brings us to the most devastating long-term consequence of all this. It's not just the millions lost, it's the damage to public faith. It undermines the entire charitable sector's ability to function.
And we have historical evidence of this. Think back to 2001, after a massive fraud scandal at the United Way of the National Capital area. They lost more than $30 million in private contributions.
30 million.
It was a 30% drop in their overall revenue. Trust is the currency of charity. And once you spend it on luxury homes and Caribbean trips, it's nearly impossible to earn back quickly.
And that lack of trust also causes huge internal fracturing. Within the movement we studied, local grassroots chapters claimed they never saw a dime of that $90 million raised by the Global Network Foundation.
That led to costly internal schisms, litigation, more resources drained away from the causes the money was supposed to serve. We saw one group, the Black Lives Matter grassroots chapters, state they just didn't have the resources to keep fighting the foundation in court.
So money that should have gone to programs was spent on lawyers, which just compounds the betrayal. It really drives home the fundamental lesson. Accountability isn't just bureaucracy. It is the essential protection against this kind of betrayal.
Absolutely. The structural weaknesses were the enabling force that allowed mission-critical funds to allegedly be diverted into private pockets.
The core lesson here is that weak governance and, frankly, excessive trust create the vacuum that allows large-scale fraud to flourish. It turns public goodwill into private gain.
We talked about how alleged fraud diverted $3.15 million meant for bail funds, and how one entity spent 53% of its cash on overhead.
And that knowledge should empower you, the listener, to look past the mission statement, to demand financial transparency, look for robust, independent boards, and low related party transactions from every single charity you support.
Which raises an important final question for you to consider. If charitable organizations fail to uphold the public trust, what mechanisms should society use to reclaim the misdirected funds, the real estate, the vehicles, the cash paid to board members' firms? And how do we redistribute those resources back to the local communities they were originally meant to serve?
Use this knowledge to look deeper into the financial health of the causes you value most. We appreciate you taking this deep dive with us today.